White women go to college to find a man. Black women go to college to prove they don't need one. Your mothers, our mothers failed you because your mothers are actively your competition. This is why you see women who are in their 20s partying with their daughters in their 30s and 40s. I'm sorry, on Instagram, you can have this woman and this woman. You got mother-daughter competing because if your mama ain't married, she's still dating. And if you are 25 and your mother is 41, y'all are likely looking at the same kind of men. Women have not raised their daughters. Why do we have so many women over 40 still talking about, I'm 40 and I look good, 50 and fly? Your ass should be sitting the fuck down somewhere. You should be somebody's grandma baking cookies. But instead, you got the short haircut out here talking about you a diva. You can look around and it's like, oh, I'm good, I'm a diva, and I'm this and that. Like, I'm 52 and I have women get angry because I don't date women my age. I'm like, oh.
What age group do you?
Under 35. Because number one, I don't deal with the lack of fitness.
It's so. That was a real quick. I mean, he mentioned, white women are being raised to be mothers and wives. Now, what he said sound a lot different than what you heard coming up, but I'm just curious your initial thoughts.
Yeah, and actually, what I witnessed was, gosh, how would I put this? Black women were having children, and white feminists were not. I didn't know any black feminists. I saw, when I was taking the bus to college, the girls getting on the bus from the Cabrini Green project talking about, I got pregnant, now I can start collecting my welfare check. And I'd hear this on the bus.
You hear this from different black women that you're saying?
Yeah. And every, black woman I knew had a bunch of kids already. Actually, I had one friend I worked with at my first job out of high school, Evelyn Brick House Triplet, taught me how to basically run up credit cards so you could have everything you want. Took me down to the south side to get a fake ID. I learned a lot from her. And but one of the things that white women started doing in the 80s was becoming single mothers, which was not okay in white culture. And that's, I worked with somebody in 84 who had gotten some friend to get her pregnant, and I was just completely blown away by this.
Wow.
So it actually, in my memory, if you sort of white culture, you did not become a single mother unless it was the last resort. And I remember thinking, oh no, I would never do that. Diana telling me how she had this, how she got this kid, and also the relationship she was having with this kid was worrying too. It was like that kid had a mother very dependent on him. It was just the two of them. He was her lifelong friend that she had given birth to. I can see the handwriting on the wall. So there was a lot of single motherhood in the black sphere because of the war on poverty and the welfare checks. And so that wasn't something I was going to do. And that wasn't something, that generally a white person would do when in the 80s, when I was in my 20s, right? That this single motherhood thing started then. And if you were married and got divorced, you would end up with the kids. That was starting in the 70s. But this, I'm going to have a baby on my own thing, that was brand new.
Okay, and you're saying that for white America, you would say that became more, it was introduced around the 80s, where it started to become more of a trend.
Yeah. I worked in this really interesting, talk about diversity. It was a very interesting, I worked in a pizza restaurant, and there were all kinds of people from all walks of life working there. There were girls from some Hispanic neighborhood whose husbands were in jail. And they got pregnant regularly. They were always pregnant. Yeah.
So I want to make sure I understand. You were saying, and again, this is really coming of age. You said that you noticed that a lot of the young white women were not having kids out of wedlock. Now, they may have been sleeping around and doing different things, sexual liberation, but it was still taboo to have kids out of wedlock. But at that time, you noticed that in the Black community, you met a lot of women who were not only having kids, they were usually having kids by themselves, and that they would openly talk about how they were doing that to get a check from the government.
Yeah, and then that's my observation that I saw happening in the world around me, and then in the late 80s, it starts to become acceptable
And the white and
completely alone and have a kid if you were never married. It
Okay.
really was just, not something you do. I mean, I think it also might depend on social class.
Class makes plenty.
So I also grew up in a place that had kind of a mix of social classes. There was some white trash there, and it was the white trash would have, Lola. Lola got pregnant right away and disappeared. Her sister got pregnant right away and disappeared. But that wasn't something that was acceptable.
Okay. It was still considered taboo for
And if you did get pregnant, like my friend, I just learned this actually about 10 years ago. My best friend in grade school had a much older sister who got pregnant and was whisked away and gave it up for adoption. And when I saw her again about 10 years ago, she had found her son and started a relationship with him. I had absolutely no idea. So basically what went on was, and I had another friend, same thing, his sister got pregnant. She was taken away and then returned. And there was also somebody else whose older sister was really her mother, supposedly. So it was not in the open.
Very, very, very interesting. And I think that, segues into how, because that was a question that I had if you would notice that just feminism or these different ideals, if the marketing looked different to different cultures, or if you seemed like you guys were all getting the same message, but you saw it being articulated differently.
I assumed, and this is just my assumption being on the outside looking at something, I just assumed all Black women were having kids like as soon as possible. And I would actually think about this, like, why is my race sort of being told not to reproduce? And they are, and they're getting paid for it, which is how it looked to me. Like they're being encouraged by the government, and they're getting housing, and they're getting a check to have children. And I'm witnessing this. And I'm completely on my own. I'm not going to go on welfare. That's just not fun. But I'm seeing, these people who, that's just the cycle of life for them. They're getting pregnant, in their teens. They're having their kids. And the messaging in the white world was, you absolutely shouldn't do that if you don't have a husband. And, these girls didn't have husbands. Have you ever heard of the book The Inhabitants by any chance?
Inhabitants.
It's by Julius Horowitz. He wrote two books that are very obscure, but The Inhabitants is taught in sociology classes, and it's from the perspective of a white man, social worker, who goes into the housing projects to bring the diapers to these mothers. And part of his job is to make sure there's no man there.
Yes.
If he sees a man there, he's got to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And then you want to think about why they were doing that. There's something very sinister there.
Of course.
But, as a young person looking at the world around me, it looked to me like, oh, well, if you're Black, you have a baby and you have your children and there's no man around and you get paid from the government. But me, I'm on my own.
That's really, really, really.
And we're not, and it's not clear whether you're going to get married or not. And there are no rules anymore. And I know all these girls, women my age, who are alone, who really want to get married and have kids and are very deeply angry. I remember a lot of the women I worked with at this restaurant were really angry all the time.
Because they were single?
Yeah. You couldn't just pin down a guy to get married anymore, or it was just very hard. It became very, very hard. I'm not saying that people weren't getting married or, but it became harder than it was for our mothers because the rules were thrown out.
Mm.
The end goal was thrown out. You actually had to talk about it, and it wasn't necessarily going to be him who was going to talk about it. And then I wasn't supposed to want that, so I didn't know. And you also used the word settle at the beginning of this discussion. So there's also like this idea that you no longer have to settle. Well, if you don't settle, you're going to end up with nothing.
I'm really excited to announce my new kids book, Aisha Learns to Love Her Hair. Aisha's hair is stunning, but she struggles to see its beauty. Through encouragement and wisdom from Grandma Lily, Aisha learns powerful lessons about self-acceptance. Aisha's journey is a heartwarming tale of family, culture, and confidence. Share her magical journey with your little loved one today, available for purchase.